I heard my father's laugh before I saw the room go quiet. It was the kind of laugh that cuts through champagne glasses and polite conversation. The kind that makes everyone stop mid-sentence and turn to see what's so funny. And what was so funny, apparently, was me. "She delivers meal kits in a van," he said, loud enough for the entire country club dining room to hear. My daughter. Driving around in a Honda with boxes of chicken and vegetables. My sister Sarah's engagement party. 200 guests. String quartet in the corner. Ice sculptures shaped like swans. And my father, standing at the microphone during toasts, decided that was the perfect moment to remind everyone that I was the family disappointment. I stood near the back, wearing the only dress I could afford, a navy blue thing from Target that I'd had for 3 years. My hands were shaking around my water glass. Not wine. I couldn't afford the bar minimum. "Now Sarah," Dad continued, his voice warm again as he turned to my sister, "Sarah is marrying a Harvard-educated attorney. They'll be living in that beautiful home in Coral Gables. Making us proud." The applause was deafening. I set my glass down on the nearest table and walked out through the kitchen, past the catering staff who wouldn't meet my eyes. They'd heard everything too. That was 6 months ago. And if you're watching this because you've ever been the punchline at your own family gathering, stay with me. Because what happened next changed everything. Let me back up so you understand how we got here. I'm Megan. I'm 32 years old. And I've spent most of my life as the other daughter in the Fletcher family of Miami, Florida. My sister Sarah is 3 years younger than me. She's blonde, 5'9", got a journalism degree from Northwestern. She's been the center of my parents' universe since the day she was born. I'm not exaggerating. When we were kids, Mom kept 2 separate photo albums, one bulging with Sarah's pictures, and one thin one with mine that she pulled out when relatives asked. I got my bachelor's degree in nutrition from Florida State. I graduated with honors. My parents came to the ceremony but left during the reception because Sarah had a sorority event. I remember standing alone near the punch bowl, watching other families take pictures, wondering what I'd done wrong. After college, I wanted to become a registered dietitian. I applied for internships, but they were all unpaid and I had student loans. So I worked 3 jobs, waitressing, tutoring, stocking shelves at Whole Foods at 4 in the morning. I saved everything I could. If this hits home, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Sometimes it helps to know you're not alone. But then my grandmother got sick. Pancreatic cancer. She lived with us, and someone needed to take care of her. Sarah was busy with her career. Mom said she couldn't handle the medical stuff. Dad worked long hours at his accounting firm. So I moved back home. I put my dietitian dreams on hold. I spent 18 months feeding my grandmother, managing her medications, sitting with her during chemo, holding her hand when she couldn't sleep. She died on a Tuesday morning in March. I was the only one in the room. At the funeral, my father gave a eulogy about how much Grandma meant to all of us and how we took such good care of her. He didn't mention my name once. After Grandma died, I was lost. I was 30 years old with a gap in my resume and no money saved. The dietitian internships had all passed me by. I'd aged out of most of the programs. My student loans were in forbearance, but the interest was piling up like snow I couldn't shovel. So when I saw an ad for Fresh Routes, a farm-to-table meal kit delivery service in Miami, I applied. The job was simple. Drive a refrigerated van, deliver pre-portioned ingredients and recipe cards to people's doorsteps, smile and wave. It paid $16 an hour. It wasn't glamorous. But it was honest work, and I was good at it. I actually loved it, if I'm being honest. I loved talking to customers. I loved seeing their faces when they opened a box of fresh vegetables and organic chicken. Some of them were elderly. Some were busy parents. Some were people like me, just trying to make it work. I built relationships. I remembered birthdays. I recommended recipes. One customer, Mrs. Chen, started leaving me homemade dumplings on her porch. Another, a guy named Marcus who worked nights as an ER nurse, would leave me thank you notes that said things like, "You have no idea how much this helps." But to my family, I was a delivery driver. That's it. That's all they saw. Sarah worked at a glossy magazine in Brickell. She wrote trend pieces about Miami nightlife. She dated a rotating carousel of men with boats. And then she met Brent, the Harvard lawyer, son of a federal judge, future city commissioner or some other thing my parents could brag about. At family dinners, Mom would ask Sarah about her articles. Dad would ask Brent about cases. And they'd ask me, "Still driving that van, Megan?" Every single time. Like I was stuck in amber. Sarah's engagement party wasn't just a party. It was a performance. Mom and Dad rented out the Coral Gables Country Club. They invited everyone they'd ever met, colleagues, neighbors, people from their church, even my dad's old college roommate who flew in from Atlanta. The invitations were printed on linen cardstock with gold foil. I got mine in the mail like everyone else. No phone call. No, "We'd love for you to help plan this." Just an invitation with my name misspelled, Megan. I should have known it was going to be bad. When I arrived, there was no seat for me at the family table. Mom said it was an oversight and pointed me toward a table near the kitchen doors with some second cousins I'd met twice. Sarah floated around in a white cocktail dress, showing off her ring, laughing that high, musical laugh she uses when she wants people to envy her. Brent's family was there too. His parents, his two younger brothers, even his grandmother. They all looked like they'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren ad, pastel linens, sunglasses perched on heads, that easy confidence of people who've never worried about money. I sat at my table and ate the rubber chicken and smiled when people asked what I did. I work in food logistics, I'd say, which was technically true. Tap the like button if you've ever had to explain your life to people who've already decided you're not worth their time. But then came the toasts. Mom went first. She talked about Sarah's beauty, her intelligence, her bright future. She cried delicate tears. Everyone clapped. Brent's father went next. He talked about family legacy, about building something lasting, about how proud he was to welcome Sarah into their family. And then my father stood up. He started fine. He talked about watching Sarah grow up, about her first byline, about how she'd always been destined for greatness. The room was eating it up. And then he said it. "You know, I have two daughters. Sarah, who's about to marry into a wonderful family and build an amazing life. And Megan." He paused. People turned to look at me. I felt my face go hot. "Megan delivers meal kits in a van," he said. And he laughed. That booming, performative laugh. But hey, someone's gotta do it, right? The room did that awful thing where some people laugh because they think they're supposed to, and some people go silent because they know it's cruel, and everyone is looking at you to see how you'll react. I didn't react. I stood up, I walked out, and I sat in my van in the parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to decide if I was going to cry or scream or drive into the ocean. I did none of those things. I drove home. I unfollowed my entire family on social media. And I went to work the next day like nothing had happened. Because what else was I supposed to do? For 2 weeks, no one called me. Not my mother. Not my sister. Not my father to apologize. Sarah posted 40 pictures from the engagement party on Instagram. I wasn't in any of them. In the group shots, I'd been cropped out. I stopped going to family dinners. When Mom texted to ask why, I said I was busy with work. She sent back a thumbs up emoji. That was it. I threw myself into my deliveries. I picked up extra shifts. I started meal prepping for myself using the recipes from Fresh Routes. I lost 12 pounds without trying. I slept better. I realized that the knot in my stomach I'd been carrying for years was starting to loosen. And then, on a Thursday afternoon in October, my phone rang. Unknown number. Washington, D.C. area code. I almost didn't answer. I was in the middle of a delivery route in Coconut Grove, and I had 6 more stops before sunset. But something made me pick up. Is this Megan Fletcher? A woman's voice. Professional. Brisk. Yes, I said. Who's this? This is Caroline Diaz from the Office of Secretary Linda Montero, U.S. Department of State. I'm calling to follow up on the application you submitted to the International Nutrition Security Initiative. Do you have a few minutes to talk? I sat down on the curb next to my van. I'd forgotten about that application. Completely forgotten. 8 months ago, back when I was still hopeful, I'd applied to a fellowship program run by the State Department. It was for nutritionists and public health professionals who wanted to work on food security projects in developing countries. It was a long shot. They only took 30 people a year out of thousands of applicants. I'd submitted my application on a whim, late one night after a family dinner where my dad had asked if I was still playing with meal kits. I never heard back. I assumed I'd been rejected. Yes, I said, my voice shaking. I have time. Caroline Diaz told me that I'd been selected as a finalist. Out of 4,000 applicants, they'd narrowed it down to 60. And now they wanted to interview me for one of the 30 fellowship positions. Your application stood out, she said. Your work with vulnerable populations, your caregiving experience, your understanding of nutrition access issues. And your reference letters were compelling. Reference letters. I'd asked Mrs. Chen, the dumpling lady. And Marcus, the ER nurse. And my old professor from FSU who I'd kept in touch with via email. I didn't ask anyone in my family. I didn't even tell them I was applying. The interview was in 3 weeks. In Washington, D.C. They'd pay for my flight and hotel. I said yes before she finished talking. When I hung up, I sat on that curb for 10 more minutes, staring at my phone. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call Sarah. I didn't tell anyone. I just smiled. A real smile. The first one in months. Comment below if you've ever gotten an opportunity that nobody expected you to deserve. I want to hear your stories. I used 3 vacation days and flew to D.C. on a Tuesday morning. The State Department building was massive, white stone, columns, American flags everywhere. I felt small walking through the security checkpoint in my one good blazer and the nicest shoes I owned. There were 12 other finalists there that day. Most of them had master's degrees. Some had PhDs. One woman had worked for the WHO. A man had run feeding programs in refugee camps in Jordan. I was a meal kit delivery driver from Miami with a bachelor's degree and a gap in my resume. But when I sat down across from the interview panel, 5 people, including a deputy undersecretary I'd only seen on CNN, I didn't apologize for any of that. They asked me about my caregiving experience. I told them about my grandmother. About learning to puree foods when she couldn't swallow. About researching drug interactions. About sitting with her at 3 in the morning when the pain was too much. They asked me about food insecurity. I told them about my customers. About Mrs. Chen, who was on a fixed income and couldn't afford grocery delivery fees. About Marcus, who worked 60-hour weeks and didn't have time to meal plan. About the single mom on my route who cried when I brought her a free box because her SNAP benefits hadn't come through. They asked me what I'd do with the fellowship. I told them the truth. I'd learn everything I could. I'd work harder than anyone you've ever hired. And I'd come back and use that knowledge to help people who don't have anyone fighting for them. The deputy undersecretary smiled. Thank you, Megan. We'll be in touch within 2 weeks. I flew home that night. I didn't tell anyone where I'd been. The call came on a Friday afternoon, exactly 13 days later. I was delivering to a condo building in South Beach. I'd just handed a box to a woman in yoga pants when my phone buzzed. Megan, this is Caroline Diaz. I'm pleased to offer you a position in the International Nutrition Security Initiative Fellowship. Congratulations. I don't remember what I said. I think I thanked her. I think I asked her to repeat it. I might have cried. I honestly don't remember. The fellowship was for 18 months. I'd spend 6 months in DC training, then 12 months working on food security projects in East Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda. I'd be working with NGOs, local governments, agricultural co-ops. The stipend was $60,000 a year. Plus housing. Plus travel. Plus health insurance. It was more money than I'd ever made. More than that, it was everything I'd wanted since college. It was the career I thought I'd lost. It was proof that I wasn't the family disappointment. I wasn't the punchline. I was good enough. I called my landlord and gave notice. I called Fresh Routes and put in my 2 weeks. I booked a one-way ticket to DC for January. And then I did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I decided to tell my family. In person. At Sarah's wedding. Sarah's wedding was in December, 8 weeks after I got the fellowship offer. It was at the same country club where the engagement party had been. 300 guests. A 12-piece orchestra. Flowers flown in from Ecuador. The whole thing cost more than my student loans. I wore a dress I bought specifically for this occasion, a deep emerald green, tailored, elegant. I got my hair done. I looked good, and I knew it. When I arrived, Mom looked surprised to see me. Oh, Megan. You came. I'm her sister, I said. Of course I came. Dad barely acknowledged me. Sarah was too busy being the bride to notice I existed. Fine. I wasn't there for them. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll give her that. Sarah looked stunning. Brent looked like every privileged man who's never been told no. They said their vows. People cried. The whole thing felt like a commercial for a life I was supposed to want. At the reception, I was seated at the same table as last time. Near the kitchen. With the second cousins. But this time, I didn't mind. I ate my overpriced salmon. I drank my wine. I waited. If you've ever walked into a room knowing you're about to flip the script, hit that subscribe button. You'll want to see where this goes. Dinner ended. The DJ announced it was time for toasts. The best man went first. Boring story about college. Brent's dad went next. Something about legacy and tradition. Mom went next and cried again. And then the DJ said, "We have one more toast. Megan Fletcher, the bride's sister." The room went quiet. Sarah's head snapped toward me. Mom looked like she'd seen a ghost. I hadn't told anyone I was giving a toast. I'd slipped the DJ $50 and asked him to add me to the list. I walked up to the microphone. I smoothed my dress. I smiled at the room. "Hi, everyone. I'm Megan, Sarah's older sister. Some of you know me. Some of you know me as the one who delivers meal kits in a van." A few uncomfortable laughs. My father shifted in his seat. I'm not going to lie. Sarah and I haven't always been close. We grew up in the same house, but we lived in different worlds. She was the golden child. I was the one who faded into the wallpaper. And that's okay. Families are complicated. Sarah was staring at me now. Brent looked confused. But I want to thank Sarah for one thing. See, being underestimated your whole life does something to you. It makes you hungry. It makes you work harder. It makes you prove people wrong. I paused. Took a breath. So I want to share some news. In January, I am leaving Miami. I've accepted a fellowship with the U.S. Department of State. I'll be working on international food security projects in East Africa. It's a competitive program. They chose 30 fellows out of 4,000 applicants. I'm one of them. The room erupted in whispers. My mother's mouth fell open. My father went pale. Secretary Linda Montero herself called to congratulate me last week. She said my work with underserved communities and my dedication to caregiving made me an ideal candidate. She said I represent the best of what public service can be. I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. So thank you, Sarah, for reminding me that I don't need anyone's approval to build a life I'm proud of. Congratulations on your marriage. I hope it brings you everything you want. I raised my glass to the bride and groom. And I walked off. The reception continued, but I was done. I said goodbye to Mrs. Chin, who'd been invited as one of Mom's charity friends and had grabbed my hand and whispered, "I'm so proud of you." I hugged Marcus, who'd come as someone's +1 and told me, "You're going to change lives over there." I didn't wait for my parents to find me. I didn't wait for Sarah to pull me aside. I walked out to the parking lot, got in my van one last time, and drove home. My phone exploded within an hour. "Sarah, how could you do that at my wedding?" "Mom, you embarrassed your father in front of everyone." "Dad, we need to talk." I didn't respond to any of them. I silenced my phone and packed boxes. 3 days later, my mother showed up at my apartment. She didn't knock. She used the spare key I'd forgotten she had. "You made us look like terrible parents," she said. I was taping up a box of books. I didn't look up. I told the truth. "If that made you look bad, that's on you. Your father is humiliated. People have been calling him all week." "Good," I said. I stood up. "Do you know what it's like to spend your whole life being invisible? To work 3 jobs while Sarah got her internships paid for? To put my entire life on hold to take care of Grandma while you all pretended it wasn't happening? To sit at family dinners and be asked, "Still driving that van, Megan," like I'm some kind of failure? Mom looked at me like I was a stranger. "We never said you were a failure." "You didn't have to say it, Mom. You showed me every single day." She left after that. No apology. No hug. Just a quiet click of the door. Tap the like button if you've ever had to choose between your peace and your family's comfort. It's the hardest choice you'll ever make. I left for DC on January 8th. I sold my van. I donated most of my furniture. I packed 2 suitcases and said goodbye to the apartment I'd lived in for 4 years. Fresh Routes threw me a little going-away party. My manager gave me a gift card and a card signed by all my coworkers. Mrs. Chen brought dumplings. Marcus brought cupcakes. A dozen customers I'd delivered to over the years showed up just to say good luck. My family didn't come. They didn't call. They didn't text. And you know what? I was okay with that. I flew to DC on a Tuesday morning. The State Department put me up in a furnished apartment in Arlington. It had a view of the Potomac River. It had a dishwasher. It had space and light and quiet. I started my training the next day. I met the other 29 fellows, brilliant, passionate, kind people from all over the country. We studied epidemiology, agricultural policy, logistics, cultural competency. I worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life. I was good at it. Better than good. In March, I flew to Tanzania. I spent a year working with women's co-ops, teaching nutrition education, helping local governments build sustainable food distribution systems. I learned Swahili. I made friends. I fell in love with the work. I sent my parents one postcard from Dar es Salaam. It said, "I'm good. I'm happy. I hope you are too." They never wrote back. I came back to the US in April, 18 months after I'd left. The fellowship had ended, but I'd been offered a full-time position with a non-profit that worked on domestic food insecurity. The job was based in Washington, but I'd travel to underserved communities across the country, Appalachia, Native reservations, inner cities. I was making $75,000 a year. I had health insurance. I had a 401k. I had an apartment I loved and work that mattered. I hadn't spoken to my family in over a year. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of them, maybe. I missed the family I'd wanted us to be. But I didn't miss the reality. And then, one Saturday morning in May, my phone rang. Sarah. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Megan? Her voice was small. Shaky. Yeah. I need to talk to you. Can we meet? I didn't owe her anything. But I was curious. Okay. We met at a coffee shop in Georgetown. She looked different, thinner, paler, less polished. She ordered a latte and didn't touch it. Brent left me, she said. I didn't say anything. He's been cheating on me for 6 months. With his paralegal. Everyone knew but me. He filed for divorce last week. I still didn't say anything. Mom and Dad are devastated. They keep asking what they did wrong. They keep saying they can't believe this is happening to me. She looked up at me, her eyes red. I thought my life was perfect, Megan. I thought I had everything figured out. I took a sip of my coffee. I'm sorry you're hurting. I really am. But I don't think I'm the person you need to talk to about this. I know, she said quietly. I know I don't deserve your sympathy. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. For everything. For how we treated you. For how I treated you. It was the first time she'd ever apologized to me for anything. I didn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I nodded. Thank you for saying that. We sat in silence for a while. And then I told her about my work. About the co-ops in Tanzania. About the women I'd met who were changing their communities. About the program I was building to bring fresh food to food deserts in Mississippi. She listened. Really listened. And when I was done, she said, "You were always stronger than me." No, I said. I just didn't have a choice. Here's what I learned. Being underestimated is a gift. Not at the time, it feels like slow suffocation. But later, when you've built something real, when you've proven yourself to yourself, you realize that you never needed their approval in the first place. My father mocked me at an engagement party. My family treated me like I didn't matter. And I let that fuel me instead of destroy me. I'm not going to lie and say everything's perfect now. I still have days where I hear my dad's laugh in my head. I still have moments where I wonder if I'm good enough. But those moments are fewer now. And quieter. I talk to Sarah sometimes. We're not close, but we're not enemies. She's rebuilding her life. I'm proud of her for that. I haven't spoken to my parents in 2 years. Maybe one day we'll reconcile. Maybe we won't. I'm okay either way. Because I built a life that's mine. A life I'm proud of. A life that matters. If this story hit home, leave a comment and tell me what you're building when nobody's watching. And subscribe, because I share these stories to remind you that you're worth more than anyone's low expectations. I'm Megan. I used to deliver meal kits in a van. Now I'm changing food systems across the country. And my father's laughter doesn't scare me anymore. You don't need anyone's permission to become who you're meant to be. You just need to keep moving forward, even when the people who are supposed to love you are laughing behind your back. Especially then. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so undeniable that their opinions become irrelevant. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you're not the punchline. You never were.